G'day. Good morning. I'm glad you can understand my slightly weird Swedish-Australian accent. For those of you who can understand my Swedish-Australian accent, please, if you're an introvert, just nod. Yeah, okay. If you're an extrovert, please don't hold back. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as a futurist, dare I say, I'm also a little bit of a traditionalist and a little bit of a humanist. So while we'll talk about AI trends, agentic commerce, I also want to give a little bit of a cap nod to the incredible humans in the room, or maybe the cyborgs in the room as well, to unfold the enduringly important role for humans, even in an AI-led future. Now, as a futurist, which basically means my mum has absolutely no idea what I actually do for a living. She calls me her son, the one who used to be a lawyer, who's now a glorified astrologer. There's no one like your family to tell you what you actually truly do for a living. She totally, is it just me, by the way, who struggles to explain to my elders, my peers, what I actually do for work? Anyone else? Okay, and you actually all have honorable professions. But as a futurist, I also want to explore with you the enduring role of the analog, the high touch, as well as the high tech today. And before we start talking about the AI-led future, I want to take you back on a historical journey, just for a moment in time, back to my native city of Stockholm, Sweden, to a time back in the 1910s when things were just a little slower, things were just a little quieter. They were either this or that, a little bit more binary, black or white, not as grayscale and complex as they seem to be today. And this here was the urban vista back in the 1910s that once upon a time greeted a man by the name of Georg Johansson, or the son of Johan, which sounds very Viking-esque, or as we'd say in Australia, George Johansson. As the second oldest son on the family farm, he had few inheritance rights, and as a result, he had to make his entrepreneurial, his commercial future in the cityscape of Stockholm. And after completing a retail apprenticeship for nearly 6 years, he took his life savings, his venture capital, and he breathed life into his first bricks and mortar shop to dress the increasingly sophisticated Swedish gentlemen of that era. And his business model, in an age where things were so simple that people only wore black or white clothing, that usually gets a laugh, times were simpler. This was a time before YouTube, before TikTok dancing, before Instagram, even before selfie sticks, when looking into a camera was still very much of a technological novelty. And of course, as you all know, his business model was all about the personal touch, the bespoke, the tailoring, the perfectly bespoke tailored portfolio of clothing for Swedish gentlemen. And in a cap nod of approval to his family farm, his family heritage, as he became a man of commerce, he changed his surname from Johansson to the man from the southern farm, or in Swedish, Georg Sörman. He's my great-grandfather, and as you can tell, he must have been a bit of a futurist because he got a great haircut, a cool little pocket square, and you can also see that we share some genealogical traits with North Korean dictators. And he invested in the latest technology of that era, the neon sign, to win the then analog hearts and the then analog minds of yesteryear's customers. But for my mother, Birgitta, who looks pretty amazing for a 106-year-old, as you can tell, we moisturize in our family. She still tells me what to wear every day of the week. For her, in an era both of digital disruption but also AI technologies, the business environment has shifted underneath her feet, essentially pulling the rug underneath her business model. Today, as you know, the customer, if they're still human, will still walk into a shop occasionally, ask my mother for approval. She'll tell them stories about all the amazing family-owned businesses and the organic cottons in her wares, where she sources them, the provenance, all of that. Then, incentivized with a 5% discount from amazon.com/fashion, the customer will scan a few barcodes to update the real-time comparative pricing cloud. Yes, this happens. Then they'll say, hey, we'll think about it. And you know they're not going to think about it. They then exit the store to the sound of a very, very lonely little bell, go around the corner and order the item on mrporter.com instead. My mum calls this new type of customer someone who's had their mind go from analog to digitized, a cyber terrorist. And I think you can understand why. The way my mum runs her rails, everything underneath her business, the back room, is very, very analog. Right? Her version of big data is with a pen and paper measuring her SKUs like this. Right? Now, the reality is that my mum's business is in many ways perfectly prepared for a world that no longer exists. Exactly. Can you imagine how annoying it must be to have a son who's a futurist and goes and meddles in family business affairs, trying to challenge her to do things differently? She is my toughest pro bono client. And a few years ago, I wrote my mum a little love letter called Digilog, How to Win the Digital Minds and the Analog Hearts of Tomorrow's Customers, where I argued to my mum, this is not necessarily about throwing the analog baby away with the digital bathwater, but it's about embracing the best of the analog and the human touch, the tradition, of course with the digital, the virtual, the AI-led, and the high tech. This book has the ears of Fortune 500 CEOs in Australia. Westpac, the second largest bank, the oldest bank in Australia, credits the ideas in this book with them moving from number 4 in terms of retail banking customer satisfaction to number 1. Unfortunately for me, the person I wrote this little love letter for has not yet read the love letter. Who senses a little bit of intergenerational tension? Who feels like you're just part of a family therapy session so far? Thank you. Yes, it's a group therapy session. Thank you very much. Thank you for allowing me, as Brené Brown would say, to be vulnerable amongst peers. Now, you know these two worlds. You know the era of digital disruption. I believe the next version of this, which is already happening, is not just the move from the analog to the digital world and the combination of both of those two, but a new layer of agentic commerce, where we're starting to trust agents to do our shopping for us. And personally, I welcome this because digital disruption also meant that all of a sudden, banks taught us all how to be bank tellers because we had to do our online banking. All of a sudden, we all had to be grocery checkout people. Who loves being a grocery checkout person in your spare time? Who loves being a travel agent in your spare time because you all do it online now? Not all of these things are fun, and I would argue that in this era there is a paradox of choice. We've all become our own procurement agents, and sometimes that spikes our cortisol. Would you agree? I would welcome a concierge to handle all of those things on my behalf, even if they're a robot who's with me. Yeah, okay, there we go. I love the claps, by the way. There was one gentleman yesterday who was clapping for everything. That was amazing, by the way. Feel free to do that if you want. All right, there we go. Sadly, despite best efforts to convince my mum that the future is Digilog, during the pandemic, after 104 years in business, my parents at the tender ages of 70 and 67 at the time had to file for bankruptcy. And my mum always points her finger at the pandemic. But we know many retailers who were digitally prepared, whose inventories were up to scratch, who could satisfy customers' digital minds and analog hearts and do online, many of them flourished. The reality is my mum's failure to modernize and get with the mega trend of digitization fundamentally led to the collapse of her business. I am totally airing my family's dirty laundry here. Mum agrees to me sharing this here in Chicago uniquely because she gets paid with a non-fungible token as a result. This is not the outcome that I want for you in the next gigantic move towards the future of commerce, which I believe is agentic. But that is not to forget about the humans that we also serve and the humans that will influence who the AI agents buy from. Because your brand stories will still be the parameters that the humans feed into the AI agents to make selections for them. Sustainable products, organic products, maybe the cheapest product, maybe the one that's made locally, whatever it happens to be. We can still feed your brand story into the choices that the AI agents make. Now, a lot of this presentation, contrary to what Heather Hershey said yesterday, will feel a lot like science fiction. But I believe that science fiction is now becoming science fact. Science fiction is now becoming science fact. And to prove this point, let me take you back to a science fiction movie. Who remembers this movie, Ex Machina? Fantastic movie. If you haven't already seen it, you now have permission to watch it as part of your continuous professional development points. Now, when this movie was launched, the essential plot line, which is around the Turing test. What's a Turing test? A Turing test is a blind test, where in a blind test, you don't know if you're interfacing with a human being or a robot. The robot is so sophisticated that it can fool you into thinking you're interacting with another emotionally intelligent human being. Does this sound eerily familiar to some of the unique content you've been consuming online recently? Yes. And the marketing team behind this movie, they thought, how are we going to launch this idea virus of this movie so that people actually want to go and see it? And they thought, why don't we launch it at the coolest conference in town, CommerceLive 2026? No, they launched it at the second coolest conference in town, South by Southwest in Austin, Texas. But they did it on the most logical digital platform available to them at the time, on Tinder. Because they realized a large portion of the conference attendees would be geostrategically updating their passports to Austin, Texas, hoping to go on a hot date later on that evening. And unbeknownst to the lovesick puppies in the audience, they'd built an avatar based upon the looks of the Swedish actress Alicia Vikander without all the weird cyborg headgear. And because she's female but also artificially intelligent, she was able to have a multitudinal, multitasking number of conversations, flirtatious conversations at the same time with the lovesick puppies. And as you all know, from a sales and marketing perspective, what you need at the end of any good marketing conversation is a call to action. Her call to action is, if you've enjoyed this flirtatious conversation, you want to see more pretty pictures of me, go to my Instagram account. What do you think awaited them on her Instagram account? A little message saying, you've been hacked. Here's a promotion about a movie about us passing the Turing test. Case in point. Science fiction, yes, is now becoming science fact. Now, if we fast forward just a little bit, when OpenAI put ChatGPT to the test a couple of years ago to say, hey, how good are you actually? Are you at human levels? Can you pass the Turing test? They threw the gold standard online to prove whether you're a human or whether you're a robot, the captcha test at ChatGPT. And I don't know about you, but I frequently fail the captcha test. Anyone else? All right. Clearly a number of robots or cyborgs in the audience today. Now, ChatGPT thought long and hard about this, and they went, I'm going to recruit a human on TaskRabbit to do this task on my behalf and pay them a little tip for doing so. Now, the human got a little bit nervous about this and said, hey, this doesn't feel right. Are you a robot? And the robot said, how dare you, in an age of diversity, equity, and inclusion, accuse me of being a robot? I'm just vision impaired. Gaslighting and manipulating the human into doing the task on its behalf. This is the world we're now living in. Science fiction is becoming science fact, and in a sense, we've moved beyond this, right? To a point where it isn't actually science fiction anymore, maybe yesterday's science fiction. It is now fact, and this is all about maths. The new Moore's law for Agentic AI is that it's doubling, not every 18 to 24 months in sophistication, but when it comes to coding, it's doubling in its sophistication every 3 months. So while we sit on the sidelines awaiting skeptically for a second mover advantage, our competition is 2xing us in the next quarter, 4xing us in the next 2 quarters, 16xing us in the next year, or 256xing us in the next 2 years, while we're skeptically sitting back and just saying, hey, we'll observe all of this. If we fast forward a little bit more recently, we now have Maltbook, an exclusive social network only for agents. No humans allowed unless you're a voyeur and you just watch and observe what happens. They've developed their own language and their own religion as a result. This is where Agentic is going. And now on rentahuman.ai, AI agents who still struggle a little bit with last mile delivery can now hire meat workers, yes, that's us humans, to carry out tasks on the AI's behalf. Similar to TaskRabbit.com, the only difference is you get hired by an AI agent. And of course, we'll all have jobs in the future because, the AI still don't have muscle. So rest assured you're fine. Now, who just wants to retire before you have to learn any of this new shit? Now, the good news is if we just retire today, the robots can never, ever steal our jobs. So we are totally fine, right? So I get excited, however, about this new era where we'll all have our Jerry Maguire-style agents. Someone that can show us the money, not only on our websites, which of course increasingly will be AI coded, right? Or vibe coded, whatever it happens to be, but also someone representing us into making smarter choices with our hard-earned blood, sweat, and tears and money. But I don't know about you. Has anyone given a credit card to a loved one? Maybe your kids? Maybe a new partner? Was there a bit of trust involved in that? Yeah? Do you regret the choice? I've got an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old, two wonderful boys back in Sydney, Australia, where I live, and I feel a little bit like a walking credit card to them, right? They're not asking me just to hand over their credit cards, but of course they're now going, hey, give it credit cards to the AI agents that will represent us. If you're not trusting signing up one of your loved ones under your credit cards, who's trusting already giving a credit card to your AI agent? Anybody? A few. For a few early adopters who feel totally comfortable with that new notion. In this era, the sophistication of AI is such that, and some people have conspiracy theories around this, by the way, I should just flag, but just a few weeks ago, Scott Bessent and Jerome Powell called an emergency meeting for the largest banks in America. Why? Because the new model from Anthropic, Claude, was so sophisticated in finding vulnerabilities, including in the bank's ecosystems, that they had to essentially sandbox this and wall it because of this emergency meeting. The tool and the threat is the same technology. Right? The tool and the threat is the same technology, which makes me wonder, in an age where we still have to solve captcha tests when we do our online shopping at times, how's that going to work if AI agents are doing our shopping on our behalf? But I'm sure that is something that the people at Commerce can solve for all of you. But trust is a major factor here. We can use this trust and the technology to our advantage, even in a new threat landscape where new threats are emerging across surfaces. Here's one quick example of an innovative company using AI agents in a very smart fashion to actually fight fraud and online scams.
My friend, Daisy.
Hello, scammers. I'm your worst nightmare. I'm an AI created by O2 to waste phone scammers' time. So, W's then a dot.
3 times W and then dot.
I think your profession is bothering people, right?
I'm just trying to have a little chat.
It's nearly been an hour! For the love of...
Gosh, how time flies. It's showing me a picture of my cat, Fluffy.
It's showing you the picture of your cat, Fluffy.
Stop calling me dear, you stupid.
Got it, dear. Because while they're busy talking to me, they can't be scamming you. And let's face it, dear, I've got all the time in the world.
So that is AI Granny, and I think all the training data for this particular large language model came from them studying how my parents are with telemarketers. Extremely patient, and they never hang up. The point here is that you'll be selling to this type of AI agent in the near future. You'll be selling to AI Granny, who's highly skeptical, might waste your time, or might just entirely skip your website because the rails you've built are not optimized both for human story, but also the data that gets you discovered. There's an art and a science to the future of commerce. This is about the left brain and the right brain coming together. We need the logic, but we also have to have the emotion, finding and feeling at the same time. Now, little story. I grew up in a household, yes, both of menswear, but also my dad was in the military his entire career, so I was pretty much born with this haircut. He's been helping me with my crew cut since I was very, very young. Now, which means if I don't have hair product, my cortisol levels spike. It's incredibly anxiety-inducing for me. I told you this was a therapy session. So when I arrived in Chicago the other night and I realized that I didn't have my Baxter of California clay pomade with me, I freaked out. I arrived at 8 o'clock on Monday night and I went, hey, where's my clay pomade? Sydney, Australia. Okay, where do I buy this? And of course, I like to support the little guy, so I was like, which barbershops can I go to? Which ones stock this? None of their inventories or website presences or web shops showed me any availability or when they could deliver it or when I could pick it up. I then went to my Claude and I went, hey, where can I buy Baxter of California clay pomade in Chicago? Claude went, probably Nordstrom's. Here's a phone number. I call up Nordstrom's, get passed around, the calls get lost and dropped a number of times. They don't have anything here, but in another state, they can't get it to me until later on today. I then went, well, maybe the choice is to get an AI agent to do my work for me while I'm sitting in my hotel room preparing for this keynote instead. And yes, the solution was Amazon, but more specifically with their Rufus AI agent, who's able to, of course, scan the entire internet, figure out the best solution for me, and of course, are able to ensure that I still have a good hair day for all of you today. It's really just for me, right? But the sad thing is here that I couldn't support the little retailer or the traditional retailers. Yes, I also love Amazon, but they got me out of trouble because they've done all the product cataloging, their inventory systems, they looked after the data, and of course they've also told me a story where I trust that they will be able to deliver. And not just deliver, but to deliver this little piece, yes, in 3 hours. And this is how the AI agent now chooses for me. It's got to be quick, it's got to be fast, it's got to be delivered to my doorstep. This could be you, but you see where the needle is moving to in this little example. This is about the left and the right brain. I believe the promise of artificial intelligence is that it's helping us humans take the robot out of the human. Like, I hate punching spreadsheets and doing menial and mundane work. Anyone with me? Okay, all right. Now, AI and technology is helping us take the robot out of the human so we can do less of the menial and the mundane and more of the meaningful and the humane. Wouldn't it be amazing with the cool technology that you heard about yesterday in the product updates can do all this catalog optimization, data enrichment for you so you can focus more on the meaningful and the humane, the innovation, the progression in your business. Yes, it's true. Data today gets you discovered. Story still gets you chosen. This is about combining structured data and enriched attributes, but also browsing, discovery, and serendipity for the humans. We know that AEO is now the new SEO. This is about brand, story, trust, and emotional loyalty, still critical. But it's also about operational rigor and data depth, curated journeys and personalized UX at the same time. This is not an either or, it's an and also. And this is not just for B2C either. It's not just for B2C shoppers, it's also for B2B buyers. According to Forrester's, 20% of B2B sellers face agent-led negotiations this year. But equally, 45% of consumers use AI now in buying. This is a $3 to $5 trillion opportunity. And where this is now at, according to Commerce's Pulse survey, is that 0% of their customers say that their catalog is fully AI augmented or optimized today. This is still very much green fields for all of you. But trust is a critical component in all of this. The best definition of trust I've ever come across is from my colleague Rachel Botsman at the University of Oxford Said School of Business, who says that trust is a confident relationship with the unknown. A confident relationship with the unknown. And what's the most elementary human way of building trust? A bridge between the known and the unknown. Story. Let me introduce you to that new amazing innovation known as human storytelling. This is still critical. It's been said by Brené Brown, for example, cap nod here, that story is data with a soul. Story is data with a soul. You're all in that business today. Optimize your data, optimize your human storytelling. Now, it used to be that the coolest coding language in town was Java or Python. You had to have a computer science degree to be able to get under the hood of AI. But today, the coolest coding language is Aussie English, or Swinglish, or Chicago English. If you can speak, you're now a coder. We can all vibe code our ways to new business models. And in an age where AI now speaks human, the question is whether you're able to speak both machine and human back to your customers and their AI agents. And in that world, what human impact or innovation will you now all start coding for? You've got all the tech ability. What will you choose to do with your own human creativity? We know that the old customer journey has compressed. Some people would say collapsed, right? And in that journey where an AI agent might just go straight from discovery to purchase to new ownership, what also happens is that we're also losing a little bit of the data that we used to obsess with. Right? In the old world, we had the Google search, ad impressions, clicks, site sessions, add to cart, checkout, plenty of data trails where we could tinker and make improvements. But what happens when there's just a customer query and I say, hey, Rufus, please find me Baxter of California, is that we'll lose a bunch of steps. And I believe that partnering up with the right tech vendors is critical for your ability to still get data so you can tell a better story and still optimize your rails, both for humans as well as the robots. And the role of humans in all of this, you see in this particular slide. This is my simple way of the mathematics of the future. My simple formula for human success in the future is for all of us to keep focusing on our emotional intelligence, our unique intelligence as individuals, as brands, our creative intelligence, but then also sprinkle some digital augmentation to create the most empathetic brands that we possibly could. And I want to give you an example close to my heart of someone who totally nails this combination of EQ, UQ, CQ, plus digital augmentation to deliver empathetic services. Now, I live in a little tree house in a national park in the northern beaches of Sydney at a place called Great Mackerel Beach. It's water access only. Yes, I'm preparing for the zombie apocalypse. The first rule of prepping is never tell anyone you're a prepper. All right. Now, I don't know about you and what hobbies you have. You probably have proper hobbies. One of my hobbies as a Swede is to chop wood. Clearly, I have bad technique because recently I injured my back, my L5 on my spine. I had to go and see my amazing doctor, Dr. Erin Noonan at Newport Doctors up on the northern beaches of Sydney. And she's an amazing doctor. She said, Anders, do you mind in this conversation whether rather than me turning my back onto you and breaking human rapport and punching in your electronic medical health records, I'm only doing this for illustrative purposes. She goes, would you mind if I use an AI medical scribe instead? Because she goes, I did not train for 10 years to become a medical scribe. I love seeing human beings and helping human beings with their health. And I go, you had me at AI medical scribe. Please turn Heidi Health on. Little Aussie innovation like other cool technologies in the room. Now, she goes, I used to do 2 to 3 hours of paperwork every day. Now, because of the AI medical scribe, that's gone down to 0. She goes, did you know that the average patient forgets 80% of what gets said in a medical consult? Would you like an automatically generated summary of this conversation in year 4 English so you know exactly what to do moving forward? I go, absolutely. She goes, this will also write me any referrals on her behalf to any specialist I need to go and see, saving her time again. What does this do? It shortens her wait queues. It means she can see more patients, better patient outcomes, and what does she make more of? While spending more time with her family. And the next layer of this is when her AI agent speaks to my AI agent to manage my appointments moving forward. And this is what that might look like.
Hey, Anders. I am your friendly, all-knowing GP. I just got the report from your radiologist. Your cortisone spinal tap last week was successful, and the referral to your Medicare-funded physio appointments has been automatically generated. And we have taken the liberty of proactively booking your first appointment based on your shared Google Cal availability. We cross-checked your timings with your avatar. Payments will happen seamlessly in the background, so you don't need to worry about lodging any claims. We know a picture says 1,000 words and video says 1,000 images. So click on the link below to access your Radiology for Dummies report. I hope your recovery goes well and that you will be back to chopping wood at your cabin in no time, you Viking you.
All right, I've never said those words, but courtesy of HeyGen.ai, I'm able to say those words. Now, some of the comedic timing is a little bit out of there or out of whack. Some of the facial gestures might be a little bit out of whack, but it's fairly convincing. This is the ability, right, to actually have a human layer to all of our communications. It takes 2 minutes of recording your face to generate something like this. That's the era of agentic commerce and agentic customer experience. Let me introduce you to little Max Harpham. He's a really cool kid. He's the son of one of my good friends and a former colleague of mine, Emma Harpham. And he loves his extreme sports, skateboarding. He's just a wild kid. And the really cool thing about that is that when he was born profoundly deaf. If a freight train or a truck was going through an intersection, he would have no auditory signal of that event whatsoever. But because of a great Australian innovation, the cochlear implant, of which he has 2 embedded into his skull, 1 behind each ear, he now has digital signal where there wasn't even analog noise before. And his parents proudly call him our little cyborg. What's a cyborg? A person whose mental and physical abilities are extended courtesy of technology. Today, we're all cyborgs. We're able to detect new signal, new patterns, courtesy of data, to make smarter decisions for our businesses. That data is critical for all of us to make smarter choices. And even in our organizations, the definition of what human resources look like is changing. At McKinsey, the CEO now says that they have 60,000 employees. 20,000 of them happen to be AI agents. At Moderna, the former chief of HR, Tracy Franklin, is now the chief digital and people officer because they've collapsed HR and IT into one function as we're all becoming cyborgs. And it's not only that you're preparing for agentic commerce today, it's also that in all of your organizations, increasingly the coding, of course, will not just be done by humans, but increasingly by AI agents, building their own religions and their own languages as a result. Welcome to the future, ladies and gentlemen. Science fiction is quickly becoming science fact. So what does this say about us humans? Do we love this change or do we resist it? Let me give you an example of this. Back in 1967, the Swedish government decided we were going to shift from left lane driving to right lane driving because that's the future of transport still to happen in certain parts of the Commonwealth, right? The big change management mantra from the Swedish government was just smile. We're all just new at this. It was every ambulance chasing lawyers Disneyland, as you can see. But let's compare and contrast this to a world of autonomy, of autonomous vehicles specifically. And imagine for a moment sending your kids, your nieces, your nephews, maybe even your elderly grandparents in their wheelchairs confidently out across this intersection on their way to the retirement village. I can kind of feel the cumulative heartbeats per minute just slightly escalating here in the room. Capture that on your Oura rings or your smartwatches. Now, according to the World Economic Forum, over the next 10 years, we'll be able to save 1.1 million human lives courtesy of autonomous vehicles. When I recently returned from my most recent overseas holiday from Liguria, Italy, unscathed, I personally welcome the day when humans are no longer behind the wheels. And when I share this with one of our clients at Bharti Airtel in Mumbai, India, they said, Anders, this is nothing new. This is what it looks like in Mumbai, India every day of the week. Plus we have semi-autonomous cows on the streets as well. My mum always says, Anders, the digital world feels digitally dehumanized, but I would argue that in fact, the digital world, the AI-led future, may in fact be more empathetic, may in fact be more humane, and be more cortisol lowering than anything we've experienced in the past. The key, however, is for all of us to start adopting an AI growth mindset. And a quick cap nod here to Carol Dweck's work at the University of Stanford School of Psychology for coming up with the original notion. We've put an AI layer on top of this. Moving away from a fixed mindset of this is the best work we'll ever do, right? To going, what am I missing? What else could we be doing? Shifting from this is the status quo, nothing's changing, this is my mum's mindset, towards a more abundant mindset of thinking, how can we actually do things even better? How can we scale our businesses, connect with more hearts and minds? And this is the exact point that I made with Travis Hess, the CEO of Commerce, on his podcast, on their podcast just a few weeks ago, where I said sometimes it's as easy as just remembering ourselves to think AI first every day. Look into the top left-hand corner of this slide. This is my little very analog reminder, my post-it note that sits on my desktop and my laptop every day, which says AI first. Anders, think AI first. What workflow can you challenge today to do things differently? And my two sons, Lucian and Aurelian, remind me to change the way I do things every day. Now, my Viking sons are not wearing a wig. This is their real hair, by the way, and I don't give them a crew cut. I only speak Swedish with my sons to try and bring my EQ, my UQ, and my CQ to my son, my cultural heritage, which sometimes they probably find a little bit annoying. So sometimes I digitally augment myself with Duolingo. Things I have not even taught them from human to human or H to H, they're now learning from the wise old owl on Duolingo, an AI-first company. So the or, are additional umlaut weird letters in our alphabet. They've never learned from me. They learned it from the owl. Doesn't bother me, because I'm digitally augmenting what I'm teaching them with something that's gamified and uniquely tailored to their consumer journey, their personalized UX that they're experiencing every day. Now, recently, Dr. Erin Noonan said, hey, Anders, I think Lucian, your oldest son, has a little bit of pre-anxiety. I'm going through a divorce from his mother, which we now call Dionsé. We were fiancé, but like Dionsé, divorce, fiancé sounds better, more fun somehow. So she's like, pre-anxiety, but it's going to take 9 months for him to go and see a human child psychologist in Australia. Let me prescribe you an app instead. Let me give you him some digital nutrition. Today, digital content online is somebody else's brain chemistry wrapped in a story. Sometimes your brand story. So she goes, what stories is he into? And I go, Star Wars, which I've introduced in an age-inappropriate fashion for my kids, which may also explain the pre-anxiety. She goes, go and download Headspace. So today, these days, when the kids stay with me, before we go to bed, we sit and we do breath work with Yoda on Headspace to calm his nervous system, his brain chemistry, and probably his dad's brain chemistry as well, before we get to all the really good Pippi Longstocking Swedish stories. This is mindful technology, cortisol lowering, and sometimes even serotonin boosting, right? Wouldn't this be amazing at checkout? Sometimes actually reducing our choices. The paradox of choice states that the more choices we actually have, the less satisfied we are, and the more cortisol-inducing it is. Maybe the AI agents can also help us with our shopping journeys to help us realize that your digital content is somebody else's brain chemistry wrapped in a story. Story is still critical. If you've read these books, Significant Objects, you'll know that these anthropologists in America took a bunch of semi-useless objects, little trinkets. They bought them for $100. Then they got 100 different journalists and authors to write a little story about each object and then sold them on eBay for a 3,700% markup by saying that this little, I don't even know what it is, little horse was the totem that a girl, when she had to move from the East Coast to the West Coast, would keep and cuddle every night before you went to bed, to imagine how this little horse would transport her to a safe new environment in her new home on the other side of the country. Story leads to premium, ladies and gentlemen. What are your stories imbued with data? And the final question on all of this is, in an AI agent-led future, do AI agents have taste? Or are we still going to follow the concierge, someone who's got a sommelier taste, who knows the secret nightclubs and secret spots and speakeasies in Chicago? Or are we just going to go to Claude and say, hey, find the best place for me? Because they don't have the insider knowledge yet. So human taste, human story is still critical. Story is data with a soul. And we cannot be customer-centric or AI agent-centric unless we have great data, enriched data that still tells an amazing story for all of us. Now, futurists don't leave you with 3 silver bullets to fix all your woes, but we like to ask questions to get your human creative wheels into motion. My 4 questions for all of you to save in the back of your mind, subconsciously think about and share with your teams are the following. How can you get 2x the result with half the human effort through technology? Yes, but also your own human creativity. Which old analog processes don't offer you immediately actionable data insights and need upgrading immediately? What's the compound effect of your competition adopting the right exponential technologies while you don't by 2035? And finally, What would your competition not want you to do next? Final piece to take away from today. 3, 2, 1, as I call them. 3 things to remember from today's presentation is that your most powerful customer is already a cyborg. The window to move is right now. Secondly, optimize for 2 species simultaneously. Either or thinking between human commerce and agentic commerce is how you disappear. Data gets you discovered, but story gets you chosen. 2 questions to take away from today. 1 for your team, 1 for yourself as a leader. If an AI agent queried your catalog today, would it find everything it needs to buy from you? And secondly, are you building desire in humans while becoming legible to machines, or only doing 1? And finally, draw 2 columns for yourself on your flights home. One's about feeling, one's about finding. And score yourself honestly in each column. All of these slides are available for you to download, by the way, on the QR code and courtesy of Commerce. Make sure you do so. If you want to print them, plant a tree to offset the carbon emissions. Now, I believe we are today at the dawn of a second renaissance, an era of flourishing human creativity, augmented, yes, by the robots. An era where tradition and technology, human intelligence and artificial intelligence are joining forces to help us take the robot out of the human so we can do less of the menial and the mundane and more of the meaningful and the humane. To start solving some of the world's biggest entrepreneurial, yes, but also wicked problems, combining tradition and technology, man, woman, and machine at the same time. Start preparing for a new era of commerce, ladies and gentlemen. One that is going to feel a little bit like science fiction becoming science fact. Because it's where you, your kids, and your grandkids are going to spend the rest of your lives. See you in that future. Thank you very much.